Hey everybody, Steve Browski here. Welcome to tip number 38 in the series on 101 tips to ace your promotional exam. So let's get started here. All right, as a reminder, my website, code3firetraining.com, has lots of great free information on there. Check it out if you haven't done so already. And also my latest book from Fire Engineering Books and Videos, 101 Tips to Ace Your Promotional Exam, is the base of this video series here. So this is episode, was it 38 out of 101? So I got a few more to go here, just trying to expand on each of these little tips here. Obviously, I'm not giving away everything in the book. I'm trying to expand on some of those items and hopefully, entice you to check it out. So you can get it off fireengineeringbooks.com as well as my website. And then you also got a 25% off code if you use the code in the box there in the green box. All right. Let's go back a little bit. In tips 31, 32, 33, 34, we discussed finding mentors and also mentoring others. Pretty straightforward stuff. We then progressed to tips 35, 36, and 37, where we discussed reviewing the job description and the job announcements within your own department as well as other departments to get an idea of what will be expected of you. By now, hopefully you have an idea of what to expect. Maybe, maybe not. We're going to find out, I guess. So tip number 38 is pretty much straightforward here. Find out what to expect on your next promotional examination. Again, it can change. Every now and then I'll get someone that's very bitter and disappointed from their department because they can't pass the whatever captain's test, battalion chief's test. And I had one guy reach out recently and he was just pissed off and wants to, sue the chief, wish the chief would retire, fire the chief, blah, blah, I get it. And he's like, and he was pissed because he can't seem to pass the written test. And he goes, then the worst part is every time they change the written test. And I'm like, okay. And okay, that should not surprise you. I would hope your department is not using the exact same testing process every single time, because if they are, then you know what to do to pass it. If you don't do well the first time, you know what to do the next time. I go, it's hard to make it completely different, but most departments do try to shake it up a little bit. Why? So you don't get complacent, and so you actually stay on your game and you don't sort of, oh yeah, I'll just be like the last test, so I don't have to study it all. No, there's a reason they change it up. So you study. So that's the interesting part, is some people think that, well, what was on the last test will be on the next one. For the most part, I bet you it will. Most tests don't drastically change year to year, but they can. So be prepared. That's why I've been talking about in the last handful of episodes of looking to see what other departments are doing, so you're not blindsided by your department adding something new in the process. Now, when I talk about know what your department is going to put you through, the hoops they're going to jump you through, the most common events that departments usually do in a promotional process are these that I'll talk about here. Now, let me start off with very few departments in the year 2021, when I'm posting this, very few promote people just based on seniority, because I know a lot of people are wrapped around the axle on seniority is everything, but seniority, nothing personal, does not equal experience. Just because you've been on the job the longest doesn't mean you'll be the best at the next job, the next rank up. No different than just because you're the best damn whatever firefighter, engineer, captain doesn't mean you're going to be the best damn darn whatever the next rank is. Sometimes the best firefighters get promoted because everyone thinks they'll do well because they're awesome at being a firefighter, are not that great at the next rank up. Why? Because every time we go up a rank, it's different skill sets. You go from firefighter up to fire chief, it's almost like apples to oranges. I mean, we're here for the same reasons, obviously, to make sure that the troops are supported to go out and do their job in the field when someone calls 911 or needs us in some capacity. But the job of a fire chief is not the same as the job of a battalion chief, and not the same as the job of a firefighter or engineer. So that's why you have to, again, very few departments promote people based on seniority. And that's, and again, I know some people get pissed off about that, but, get over it, I guess. Most departments also don't promote people based on the highest written test score. There are some I still see. I saw a department in the South, pretty decent sized department. Their process for determining who the next fire chief was going to be was a written test. And I'm thinking to myself, so whoever scores the highest on a written test is going to be the best fire chief? wow, because someone can regurgitate the most information or is a good written test taker, because there's an art to that, or the best guesser for usually four multiple choice answers, they're going to be the best fire chief. I'm not saying an oral interview makes the best fire chief. There's usually a whole, that's why usually the best testing process is not just seniority or not just a written test or even an oral interview. It's a series of events that'll hopefully try to at least determine who the best fit will be. But anyway, a lot of departments still do 100 question multiple choice written test as the first part of the process. You know, think about when you took the entry level exam to be a firefighter, that was probably the first thing you did after you applied was you had to pass a written test with 70% or better. Now, I was having a good discussion with some people at another department the other day about, they were thinking about, well, for captain and battalion chief, do we even need to do a written test anymore? Why don't we just go straight to an assessment center? Well, in my department, like many others, the written test really is a weeding out process. You know, you got to get 70% or better to go to the assessment center a month or two later. And you go weeding out process, yeah, a good test discriminates, not in a negative way, not in that way you're thinking. A good testing process discriminates, simply put, who prepared and who didn't prepare. I know people say, well, they're a good test taker. Well, sometimes that is the case, but there is still an element of preparation as well too. So a good written test is there. I mean, a written test is there really sometimes as a gatekeeper. You know, just because you scored 95 and you're the highest in the written test doesn't mean you can be the best captain or battalion chief, but it does mean that you hopefully put some effort forward in some capacity. Most departments will also do an oral interview or a series of oral interviews. You know, some will do a formal assessment center, which could be like a day, half a day, 2 days, 3 days, depending on the position, the rank, the amount of candidates. You know, and the assessment center usually consists of a number of series of events, which usually include an oral interview, may include a writing exercise or an in-basket exercise, emergency scene simulations. You know, my department, we actually do two in our assessment center. It's for captain and battalion chief. It's usually an oral interview. There's usually some form of writing exercise. Sometimes we give it in advance, like a week or two in advance, saying, hey, please put this report together. And when you get to the assessment center, be prepared to deliver that report to the oral interview panel who, you know, simulate being maybe a city council that you're having to give a report to, or a station crew that the captain has to give a report to, or a training exercise to, or whatever, expectations or something else. Um, we do two emergency simulations. We usually do a structure fire simulation, which could be a commercial structure fire, high rise, apartment complex, big single family residence. And then we'll usually do a second one as well. So one of them is usually a structure fire, and the other one may be a wildland fire, because we have a lot of wildland urban interface in our area. Could be hazmat, could be mass casualty incident, could be a lot of different things. Maybe back after 9/11 in 2001, the big thing was WMD, anthrax, white powder. That was when I took the captain's test, it was right after 9/11. And guess what they gave us? It was a hazmat event. You go to the FBI building, because we used to have an FBI building in our area. And it was, you have an FBI building, and guess what? White powder. I know some of you are going, what the hell is white powder? That was the big thing for a while after 9/11 was white powder. Is it anthrax or is it not? But anyway, it was a very timely event that we may be responding to. And then another thing that you may get that I didn't list here, but a lot of departments for captain and battalion chief will maybe have a personnel counseling scenario, maybe a role play scenario with an angry firefighter, disgruntled firefighter. It could be a video-based scenario where you have to watch and maybe respond to or interact with. Could be a real live role player that's very stressful. Could be just a series of questions. Like I said, it could be you, the captain. You have to sit down with your crew, talk about whatever your expectations, but these are usually the more common events that most departments usually have. And when I'm talking common, I'm talking for usually company officer positions and usually battalion chief positions. If you're going for, say, a fire chief position, you know, the number one position, or like a number two, which is usually assistant chief, deputy chief, usually you're not going to do a written test, but you probably will maybe have a writing exercise, because if you are the fire chief or an assistant, number two, number three, you're probably going to be doing city council presentations, budget preparation, budget report outs. So yeah, there may be writing exercises to check your grammar, your flow, your writing ability. There'll probably be a series of oral interviews, probably an oral interview maybe with the union, an oral interview maybe with the command staff, an oral interview with the city leadership, maybe an oral interview with other fire chiefs from other departments. So you probably have a series of interviews as well too. You know, very rarely will a fire chief, a deputy chief, or an assistant have to go through managing a fire ground. And you may say, well, a fire chief should be able to manage the fire incident scene. Yeah, if a fire chief is working for a small, if you're the fire chief or going for a fire chief of a one station department, and in a one station department, you're probably the only chief officer as the fire chief, because your organizational chart at a one station department might be fire chief and then 3 shift captains or lieutenants and then firefighters and engineers. So yeah, in a small department, you may have to manage an emergency scene, because as the fire chief in a small department, you're probably be going out after hours covering the duty chief role. You know, but in a big city fire department, you know, no, that's why we have capable, competent battalion chiefs at that level. So know what your events are going to be, you know, understand what to expect in the process, meaning the process will change more than likely. I mean, the oral interview questions are not always going to be the same. The written test questions won't always be the same. You won't always have the same building fire to manage. It'll probably be a fire or the same personnel issue to manage, but it's the same concepts. You know, understand what to expect during those different events. So how you can be successful, and how you can get the most points. But most importantly, don't forget to prepare for the position. Getting back to that test that I said I had for my battalion chiefs, for my captain's test, where we had a FBI building and white powder. A lot of my competition didn't do well. They failed. Why? Because they didn't think it'd be a hazmat event. They were focusing on wildland. Why? Because we are a wildland department. And at the time, one of our battalion chiefs was always good at putting together wildland simulations. We had one battalion chief that would always do, every time there's a promotional exam, he'd build the simulations, you know, the 8-minute, 10-minute videos that we'd have to, you know, talk the fire out. He would build those, and his reputation was wildlands. That was his expertise. And he always did wildland. Well, that was the problem. During that test, most candidates, what do they focus on? Wildland. They focused on what they thought would be on the test. They prepared for wildland. And then when the video turned on and they saw the FBI building in the middle of the flatland country with no wildland in sight, short of a few weeds in the ground, it freaked them out. And some of them failed because they had not prepared for other incidents. They prepared for wildland, but they didn't think about a hazmat, or it could have been a mass casualty incident, or it could be a lot of other different things that we could manage. So don't just think it may be the obvious. That's why I did well in the process, because I prepared for anything. I prepared for the position, meaning as a battalion chief, or excuse me, a captain in my department. Yeah, it could be structure fire. It could be high-rise fire. It could be wildland fire, hazmat, WMD, active shooter. You know, I prepared for everything. That's why it's so critical to prepare for the position. Then it doesn't matter what you're thrown at during the process. So as always, I can't thank you enough for the gift of your time. Please feel free to reach out if I could be of any assistance to you. And until the next time, y'all take care, be safe, and we'll see you soon.